everybody, welcome back to another week where it's 50-50. I watched the right movie. Did I get it right? Stick around and see what happens. We are your hosts, Jamie, Nathan, and Chris, and this is Industry Standard.
It's also 50-50 if you turn up or not.
Thank you for coming back this week. We really struggled without you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I know life is very hectic for you right now.
Look, it was an error on my part. I understand. I do apologize.
An error?
Which I have. Yeah.
We'll call it an error.
A big error. Okay, major error. If you want to emphasize the word, fine.
Don't worry, we got on just fine without you, so we might make it a habit.
This week we are talking about David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises, starring Naomi Watts, Viggo Mortensen, and Armin Mueller-Stahl. In a story about a nurse trying to find the father of a baby whose mother had died in childbirth, which unfortunately for our nurse is connected with a Russian mob family.
You feeling a little rusty from your time off?
A little. Chris, you can start us off, so go on.
I thought it was an engaging film. Characters are interesting. It's quite well written, particularly the dialogue between characters. I think it's got some good twists, good turns. It's a little different from your typical mob film. Yeah, all in all, enjoyed it. I thought it was an engaging film with good acting. It's got Viggo Mortensen, and I like him in a lot of stuff that he does. I think this is one of his best performances, in my opinion. So yeah, what about yourself?
Well, for my opinion of the film, I thought it was really good. I watched it twice. I watched it casually last night, and then again just before the podcast. It was definitely a pleasure seeing Viggo Mortensen again, because the only thing I've actually seen him in properly was Lord of the Rings. And then, to my surprise, I go through his IMDb and I see all the films he's done afterwards, and then I just feel like an idiot for not actually seeing any of these films. But that said, he was excellent in this film. And Nathan, you said that he was nominated for an Oscar for this?
Yeah, he was nominated for an Oscar for this film. He's had 3 nominations so far, but I think this was his second one. He lost to Daniel Day-Lewis for There Will Be Blood.
Regardless if he didn't win, the nomination was definitely deserved. He was amazing in this. Definitely stood out, and I feel like his story, other than the main plot where it's the nurse trying to find the father, his story throughout the film really overshadows that entire thing, and it was just really well done. Nathan?
I think I'll pick up on something Chris said. This is obviously very much a mafia film, but it doesn't feel like one, and the easiest person to compare that to is Martin Scorsese. It could feel like a Scorsese ripoff, and especially a Departed ripoff, but it doesn't. It's very much uniquely the director's own vision and style of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it's Cronenberg who's famous especially for his practical effects, which we see littered throughout the film in numerous circumstances, which we'll get into. But yeah, like he said, I agree. I really like this film. I saw it a couple of years ago and I couldn't remember too much about it, but it was nice to go back and revisit it. I really enjoyed it.
So we should talk about the story next then. Nathan, you can start us off with the story, since you were going.
Sure. The story revolves around midwife Anna, played by Naomi Watts, who comes into contact with this young dying mother who gives birth to a child, and a lot of the film is finding out how did this woman die and who is the father of the child. And we'll talk about that first, I suppose, a lot of the mysteries in the film, because the film does set up 3 key mysteries at the start. Who kills the man in the beginning in the barbershop, or why was he killed? Who is this girl that's given birth, and who is the father, and where is the family? So obviously those are big driving forces, and they're actually answered one after another, scene. So we start off, we find out why the man was killed in the barbershop, then we find out who Tatiana was and who the father is, and then we kind of go on from there. And of course there's a bigger mystery encapsulating the whole thing, who is this mysterious Nikolai, played by Viggo Mortensen. So what did you think of the mystery that was set up? I guess I'll ask that question back to you, and how it was paid off throughout the film.
Yeah, I thought it was well done. I found the film to be a bit of a slow burner, in a sense that you're not quite sure what's going on, but then you get a couple of different stories to start to come together, and it all just starts to connect somewhere just about halfway or after halfway, and that's when you start to understand what's going on, the type of position that Anna's after putting herself in, and the type of people that we're dealing with it, because as you said, you don't quite feel like it's a film to do with the mob straight away, at least not fully, but that starts to unfold when you get a better understanding of Simeon. That starts to unfold. You get to understand what the family is all about and their traditions, and how high a power they're in and stuff. You start to understand the situation and the trouble that Anna's finding herself in, and then of course you said the mysteriousness of Nikolai, where he fits into the whole story and stuff. So I think it's very well told. I think it's a very good story. I want to say that I was left wanting more by the end of the film, maybe for a few things to be cleared up or to go further. I wanted to see where Nikolai was going, what exactly happens to the family, the father, the son, where the family lies then after that. Is there any consequences for Anna at the end and stuff like that? I wanted more when the film ended, like maybe a sequel or...
So I can see what you're saying, but I think a lot of those questions are answered, in terms of what are the consequences for Anna. Well, she's now under the protection of Nikolai, who has now moved up to being more or less over this whole family in London because his boss is so incompetent at this point, Kirill Simeon's son. So basically, Nikolai by the end of the film is controlling this family in London and the Russian mafia there. Maybe I'm picking you up wrong, but I think a lot of those questions are answered.
I felt like they're interpreted, like I have interpreted those situations and I have accepted that is what happened. But you don't really get the closure of it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You don't really get to see the follow-ups of we just get the final shot of Anna and the baby and being under protection and stuff, and then followed by the final shot of Nikolai sitting in the restaurant where Simeon would have said to interpret that he has reached a position that he wanted in power to get in that deep with the family. Like, but I think what I was just trying to say is that as a viewer you can interpret it, and that is the intention of the film, but it still kind of leaves you wanting more. It did for me. Like I would have liked to see maybe a sequel or to dive a little deeper. What happens next?
So I agree with you. I want to see what happens next as well in Nikolai's story and how that concludes. I wouldn't say that's necessarily an issue with the film.
Oh, no, by no means was I saying it was an issue.
Yeah, no, but I'd say the film is so good that I want to see what happens to this character, and he's so interesting and mysterious. I know you had something to say there, Bran.
I feel like this film, because I get what you're saying, but I don't think a film like this needs necessarily a sequel. Maybe like a director's cut or something that's like a little extended, because it is an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's quite a short film.
Yeah, it is pretty short for the story that it is. So maybe like a director's cut could come out for it to give more context to certain areas, maybe. Story-wise, I feel like the plot is overshadowed, like the main plot, I mean, where you're trying to find the baby's father, is overshadowed by Nikolai's story of trying to, be the driver and try to deal with Kirill and, just trying to, just work with him and work around what Simeon wants and all that stuff, so...
You do know he was an undercover cop, Bran.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that,
okay.
I get, that's why I mean that, that story alone is so much more interesting to me than the main plot. I don't like.
Well, let's say Anna's portion of the story is a human story of the film, because there's not much humanity in what Nikolai does with the family. It's more about Anna and her loss and why she's so interested in this child.
Yeah. I'd have to agree with that.
The story about Anna is the drive. It is the driving force of the film.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I thought it was quite clever. You learn a lot from the drunken uncle. From one scene alone, you get a whole understanding and kind of backstory to Anna's character just from the uncle alone within 2 minutes.
Oh, that scene where he comments on her miscarriage.
I can't remember, was it ex-boyfriend or ex-husband, but
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. You get straight away. You get good character development. Well, not character development, but character understanding. Backstory.
Yeah.
I had during that scene, I had to pause the film. I thought that was the most shocking scene in the whole film when he just said that about her losing the child and how different races shouldn't breed. I thought it was the only scene in the film that actually took my breath away. It was so brutal. Yeah,
the film does a great job of showing you, I suppose, the inner workings of different cultures, particularly Eastern culture and stuff like that. They're not afraid to say what they say. They're a little tougher on the skin. I don't think there is a lot of movies these days where they do such a great portrayal of Russian culture, mob culture. Not that I'm ever been in a mob or have an understanding of the inner workings of a Russian mob and stuff, but the film does a good job to kind of bring you into that kind of lifestyle and that kind of thought process of those people.
Yeah, you'd have to look more at Russian films and Ukrainian films to get more of a feel of that. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
They're kind of tougher skinned people and very verbal when it comes to giving opinions about that type of stuff.
So you weren't involved with the Kilkee hooligans or anything like that?
No comment. No comment.
Now that we've kind of got our overall feelings out of the way, let's kind of go through a couple of scenes that I think stood out, and if you have anything to add, just point it out if you think there's any additional scenes. But I think the first scene, the opening scene of the film, it's kind of split into two sections where it's the death of this man and the birth of the child, Tatiana's child. Cronenberg, of course, is known for his visual effects, especially his body horror. But I think this is his best work. It's quite shocking. even the birth of the child.
I thought it was very well done. It was very visual for a movie like this. That, as you said, that he's known for his practical effects and stuff. Very, very impressive. I did have one issue, and it was when the nephew or the young fella gets his throat slit after the Chelsea Arsenal game.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was great. No.
But you could tell it was just like a layer over his neck being
There was just something about it that wasn't as impressive of when they were snipping the fingers of the dead body, the frozen body, or as I said, the childbirth. But very impressive. Other than that, very impressive.
You could use the first scene of where that same guy slit your man's throat to where he gets his own throat slit. There are two completely different ways of doing it, and I'm not afraid to say one is a lot better than the other in that instance. Because one, there's just like a cutaway, and then you get a close up, and then blood. But then the first one, you see him cutting through everything, and it's just done much better.
Whatever Cronenberg used for the blood looked fantastic, because it doesn't look like, I know we talked about Tarantino last week while Jamie was taking his sabbatical, but Tarantino uses a certain variant of fake blood, and obviously Cronenberg has his own type, which is a lot more red and a lot more visceral.
Just to go back to the baby and the birth, that was really good. I've never seen anything like that in a film before.
It was definitely a prosthetic baby that they used. Yeah. Definitely, but you couldn't tell.
No, very, very well done.
Yeah, if someone told me that was a real baby, I wouldn't be able to argue with them if that was just putting it that way.
I'm impressed with the practical effects.
Again, that's like Cronenberg is known for. If you've seen The Fly, Dead Ringer, Videodrone, or Scanners, that's kind of all in Cronenberg's wheelhouse. But the second scene, Chris has already brought it up, is the scene with the fingers being clipped off.
Yes.
Very funny scene in a lot of ways.
You've got a sick humour.
You don't think so? I thought
something wrong with you.
Well, let's let him explain what exactly is funny about this scene.
Oh, he can. I'm all ears. I want to know what this sick man that I'm friends with found so funny about a dead man getting his finger snipped off. Because that's just pure gold comedy, isn't it?
It's dark comedy. So how about that?
Okay.
Why did you laugh?
Okay, so the first thing is
you're going to put the wallet.
Well, hold on. So, firstly, your man is obviously shoved in the freezer after he's killed, and then he gets out a hairdryer. It tries to defrost his jacket and stuff. I thought that was funny, and then he puts out a cigarette in his tongue.
Yeah,
I thought it was played for comedy, so I laughed. And then obviously he snips his fingers and makes comments to the other man in the room. I thought that was very funny.
I'm gonna watch my back around Nathan from now on anyway, because he's a very vindictive kind of person.
He does make a joke in that scene. To be fair, as well.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It's not hysterical or anything like
that.
No, but
it's dark comedy. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Other than the joke, I didn't find anything funny about the situation.
Yeah, there wasn't anything straight up hilarious.
None of this film is funny, but I just thought that particular, it was dark. Look, fuck you. It was dark humor.
No. You're evil.
Yes, it was.
You're pure evil.
Well, look, people can make their own minds up, but it was. But even the effects in that scene where he cuts off his fingers and there is no blood, because obviously all his veins and arteries are all obviously frozen.
But it was it looked like okay, this is probably going to be a dumb thing to say, but it looked a lot like rubber to me. Do you know when if you ever caught rubber before, you'd see the little indents when where the force is pushed and it's all pinched into the middle. It just looked a lot like rubber to me. That's where the effects kind of fell short for me.
Well, I imagine it was some kind of latex
silicone
used for that scene.
Yeah.
But I thought it looked fine.
I think it looked fine too. I think that is more or less what it would be like if you were snipping off a frozen finger.
Yeah, it's being nitpicky saying that, but it's just that's kind of where it kind of just fell a little bit short for me specific point.
I did, as you said, when you compare the two slitting throats, I did feel I wouldn't be surprised if they had one. They couldn't waste time on too many takes on the neck when the nephew gets So I just felt like they were it's done, we got it, because there was something off about it, and I think it's because the practical effects are so good up until that point that's why it stands out.
To be fair, that was probably pretty difficult to shoot with all the extras that were there, as well as trying to shoot everything around it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Was it a timing thing? Was it just it took so long for the blood to come out and for the skin to actually be exposed? There was just something off about it.
Yeah, timing is definitely a variable in that instance, because there's a good couple of seconds there when you see the slit and then the cut up close and then the blood coming out.
I think it's for shock though, because obviously that character is obviously supposed to be a bit simple-minded.
Yeah.
So there obviously is a shock that, you know, they would kill such a kind of an innocent character. I know he's killed someone, but he is, because he's kind of
made to do it though, right? If you're gonna like,
he is made to.
Yeah.
He's kind of forced into it. But I do think that the delay in time that you're talking about is just to build on that shock value that is immediate after.
I personally had no connection. Like I didn't.
I didn't either.
And I think it's because of what he does at the start of the movie. You don't really have sympathy for the character.
Yeah, and those were the brothers, right? From the guy that got killed at the beginning, right?
Yeah, they were the Chechens.
Yeah. So I just found it odd that the father didn't mention the son when he went to Simeon to talk to him about the Chechens, because he just said that they're gonna kill him. He never mentioned the son like getting killed by them.
Well, I imagine because they kind of say as much in that scene that Simeon already knows, and that, you know, that man's father presumes that Simeon knows, so he knows it's kind of an onset thing. I would imagine that's kind of what I got from it. So next scene that I was thinking of is the scene where Nikolai and Krill go to the brothel. Very upsetting scene.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and that's kind of where you start to see a bit more of Krill and who he is. And he's kind of afraid of his masculinity and his sexuality, and he feels like he needs to cover it up. We get more hints towards who Krill is later in the film, but that's kind of where it starts, where he's commenting, not wanting anyone to think that Viggo Mortensen is queer, I think is the language they use, and then proceeds to watch him as he has sex with this sex slave.
Yeah.
Prostitute.
Well, sex slave, Chris. It's not a choice.
Yeah. And speaking about that scene, I didn't actually get until the second time viewing. Kirill talks to Nikolai about how the Ukrainian woman got taken away by the guards and stuff like that. I didn't cop that it was actually Nikolai that, you know, tipped them off for him, like, until the second time I watched it. I know it's stupid. That's why I needed to watch it the second time, you know, so...
I'm not sure he missed that because it was pretty well set up. Because he leaves her like nearly £200 and some kind of religious card and tells her to live a little longer. So I'm not sure he didn't pick up that the first time.
I know. That's why I really needed to watch this film again. I knew just from watching it without no subtitles, so I had no idea what half of them were saying.
Do you have anything to say about that scene? Anything else? Good scene. I think that builds a lot of character and empathy for Nikolai and the kind of person he is.
Yeah, and Vincent Cassel's performance in that scene is actually done very well.
But let's move on to the tattooing scene when Nikolai passes the... What would you call it? The indoctrination into the... Evaluation into the gang, and they talk about the tattoos on his body, they talk about his family history, and to make sure he's 100% committed to the cause. I think that a lot of that was very interesting, and I kind of wish... they couldn't have done much more with it, but I kind of wanted them to do a bit more with it. It was like the tattoos being this idea of like this canvas on your body that tells your life story.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting idea, and I'm also sure I know it's true to life because we see gang members all the time, whether it's with teardrop tattoos or stuff like that, and that mark themselves when something significant in their life has happened. I thought that was an interesting scene and well played, and the acting all around is great in it.
I thought it was great. Great part of the story. It opens up a lot of avenues for Nikolai's character because it sets up the whole that he's going to be portrayed because they think that he's the son rather than Krill. It also allows the character to you get the idea that he now is in a good position of taking control of the family. Now he's got the tats and he's got the what would be perceived as the acceptance of the hierarchy of the mob and stuff like that. I thought it was very well done, a very clever part to bring all that in.
And he also has Krill wrapped around his finger because we talked about it briefly before the show, and I don't know maybe if he picked up on it or not, but Krill is very clearly, at the very least, bisexual in the film and is clearly in love with Nikolai.
At one point I even thought, is there something actually happening between Krill and Nikolai, because the way they accept each other at times, the way they act around each other, particularly the bit at the end where Nikolai convinces to hand over the baby and he starts to break down and stuff. You're almost awaiting a romantic kiss at that point between the two characters. So yeah, it's a very interesting dimension, those two characters together. At
the very end, since you brought it up, it felt odd to me, Joe, the kiss between Naomi and Nikolai.
That was one of my only criticisms of the film. Yeah. And we'll talk about that scene a bit more later on, but yeah, I don't think that kiss was warranted. I don't think they built up enough on it.
Mm-hmm. You could look at that Nikolai is, don't want to use the word impressed, but basically, you know what I'm saying, he's attracted to her because of her good nature and her fearless nature. She does even though I found it a little ridiculous, her confrontation to the mob, knowing the kind of people she's dealing with in the situation, she's a very, brave and strong character.
She's tenacious.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
This is probably the first normal person he's been around in a while. Because you get the kind of sense at the end of the film that obviously he's somewhat of a violent person, but he's doing a job at the same point. He's not particularly the same as these people in the mob, so obviously it was something for him to be able to get out and actually interact with someone who wasn't a criminal. Let's move on to the big scene, because you do want to talk about the fight scene. Well, let's set it up a small bit. It's Nikolai has been basically betrayed by the family that he's working for. They've put him in a position to be mistaken as Krill.
he's basically a sacrificial lamb.
Basically,
Yeah.
to appease the Chechens. So what did you think of that scene?
I thought it was very good that the way it was shot was very old-fashioned in the way that whenever there was a punch or a stab, there would be a close-up of the slash or a close-up of the punch every time, and you go back to the wide again. It was done really well, and then practical effect as well with the slashes, the red, the gauze, all that. It was very clear that they had like one shot for like the wide stuff where they just followed the actors doing their thing, and then they had the close-up shots. It was shot really well and played off very convincingly,
It's very animalistic, obviously, in a lot of ways, because obviously Nikolai is completely vulnerable. He has no clothes on, and he's being attacked by these kind of personal weapons and with a knife. I agree with Jamie. I really liked that scene. I thought it was one of the better and the most interesting fight scenes that I've ever seen. And I thought that the first time I saw it as well. And nothing has kind of come close to even trying to do what this film does in terms of that kind of action scene. But yeah, I liked it. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I liked it too, and I think it's because even though it is a violent and a vulnerable, it's a situation you look, because you feel for Nikolai because he's in a very vulnerable position and you don't know whether he's going to come out of it or not. But it's not over the top with the way it's shot. It's not it's just very real and impactful, because it's the way it's shot is just
It's not like a typical Hollywood film.
it's not exactly
where everything's just like a wide shot and you're just watching the whole thing happen in one shot.
you're just sucked into it. You can almost put yourself in the situation, because as you said there, it's Nikolai's undressed, he's outnumbered, they have, I'm not kind of quite sure what kind of blade or weapon that they're using and stuff, but it's a very vulnerable position. You can almost feel for the character or put yourself in that kind of position. It's just very well done. So it's definitely one of my favourite parts of the film.
Like, it's lucky he didn't fucking take someone's eye out, though. Well, I suppose he technically did, but it was with a knife.
Everything like is it's not like bam bam bam, just over the top action or violence. It's a man trying to survive and doing what he needs to do to just get past this point, and it's very believable, and it's very even just like he doesn't that scene there where he puts your man's head back into the blade from behind. That in itself is almost a slow burner. You're just waiting for it to happen. Is he going to do it? Isn't he? And then he forcefully gets it down. So all of that makes for a very good fight scene.
And then when he even gets the head down, your man doesn't die instantaneously. It's still dragged out as he's gargling and still trying to fight against it.
Very real, very well done.
Yeah, it feels like a fight for survival. Nikolai isn't just shrugging off these hits. You can tell it's doing some serious damage to him.
Yeah.
And even after it, he's not able to just walk out of there. He has to be sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. So very realistic.
Like you don't know if he's going to make it out of here. He hasn't been portrayed, even though he is portrayed as someone who's got his head on him and knows how to deal with tough situations. You still don't know, is this the end of Nikolai, or is he going to make it?
Yeah, he's not Jason Bourne. Like,
no.
There's no guarantee he'll make it out of that situation, especially seeing as he isn't the main character of the film. It's completely possible that he'll die.
Yeah.
And his grander plan at that point hasn't been revealed. We don't know that he's a Russian undercover cop.
Do we find out what his overall plan is, though? Because at the end, like we said already, he was like, he kind of runs the show then. So, like, was that the goal, or was he trying to get them all?
Well, his goal was to infiltrate the mafia, and then it ended up with him getting the stars, which his superiors hadn't planned on. And now that he has those stars, he's in such a position of power in the organization, he can't really just leave. And by the end of the film, with Simeon being put away, he has Krill wrapped around his finger, meaning that he kind of de facto runs that organization now, and he can kind of tell Krill what to do.
He's got his golden tickets now that he can just infiltrate the mob like no one's never done before.
I suppose in that instance, from what you were saying earlier, that like there's room for more context in that aspect. Like you have to kind of assume where it's going from there instead of actually knowing it, you know.
Well, I know. I think they lay it out pretty well because he has a conversation with the sergeant, detective,
Lieutenant,
or something.
Yeah,
like that.
that
I'm
he has
not
like
sure.
his like
I'm
he's
not
in
sure.
the door with his stars. Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's Metropolitan Police or Scotland Yard. I don't know what, but they have a conversation. Oh, maybe he's Interpol actually, because he's working with Russian intelligence as well. So I think they do kind of pretty well set up what is going to happen next for Nikolai in this situation. And I like.
I think I agree with Jamie in saying I think like I'd understand if people were just kind of left with more of their own interpretation rather than what the director tried to lay out.
I just have one more question about the film in general. Is Cronenberg, does he ever do sequels to his films at all, or anything resembling a sequel?
Not as far as I remember. He's very much a one and done type person. And most of his films don't call for a sequel, although I think there was a sequel to The Fly, but he had nothing to do with it.
Does he normally do films that are so short in like a feature length film?
Well, you don't need a fucking 2.5 hour film to tell a good story. Like.
A lot of films, especially a lot of great films, the norm is 90 minutes, 100 minutes. I think this film benefits from that.
I feel like I'm just too used to 2 hours, 2.5 hour long films now at this point, because there's just so many of them now.
Yeah, like a Scorsese, like if this was a Scorsese film, it would be a 2.5 hour job. Like definitely, because he's obviously a lot more interested in character and stuff like that. No, I think what Cronenberg, the decision to make it a 90-minute film, I think was the best choice for this film, because I think if you spend any more time with Nikolai, the mystery wears away.
Yeah.
And you don't really want that, or at least I don't want that. I kind of want him to be this mysterious character where you don't know his past totally. You know, he spent some time in a Siberian prison and that's about it. We don't even know if that was like for another undercover job or whether that was just in his youth. I thought it was interesting the way they went about it.
Quite like the scene in the basement. The father Simeon sends his son Kirill down to get some bottles of wine so that he can have some private time with Nikolai, to inform him that they're going to bestow family tattoos, the mark of respect, the mark of the mob. Yeah, it was a scene that it took a bit of time for me to fully understand, because Kirill is quite all over the place. We get brought down to the basement and Kirill is sitting there drinking a bottle of wine. I guess he feels that he's upset that his father, I don't know, doesn't trust him or didn't want to include him in the family business.
He's not been shown any respect. I think
and like the song he was singing in that instance as well was like, "Don't look down on me" or "Don't forget about," or something like that, you know.
So Nikolai comes down and informs Kirill that the father has decided that he wants to give him the tattoos, and we get an emotional kind of roller coaster from Kirill of, you know, being happy for his brother. That's what he keeps calling him, his brother, that he's been accepted and trusted into the family.
When he calls Simeon Papa as well.
We get a flip switch, almost like a resentment that he wasn't included with the conversation or the situation with his father and Nikolai. And it just really is a great scene to kind of to get the showing of the complex character that Kirill is.
Great performance between those two actors in that scene, and kind of like you were saying, it's the emotional touchstone of those characters' relationship and arc throughout the film. But yeah, no, great scene. Definitely.
At one point when I was watching, I thought Nikolai was getting fed up with Kirill's attitude, his hot and cold, we'll say, attitude towards things, never knowing where he stands with him.
Nikolai is there to do a job at the same time, and he doesn't really want being in charge of taking care of this petulant child anymore. So I imagine he's a bit fed up with the situation now at this point.
Very, very well portrayed, Viggo. Again, he does a great job of just, you always feel the emotions with him.
Yeah, I feel like when you go down in the beginning, you do see that Kirill is feeling sorry for himself. He's singing songs about like don't look down on me, forgive, or something like that, you know. So you do feel for him in that instance, because he's feeling disrespected. He's feeling that like his father doesn't think much about him in that instance, and it's sad. And then you see Nikolai come down, and that he's basically taken Kirill's position in the family. So then you get that resentment at the end of that scene, where he's explaining to Nikolai that the whole like promoting him in the family was Kirill's idea. That he proposed that to his father, and that's why he got promoted to begin with. And yeah, And I think it kind of sets the seeds for what he does at the end of the film.
Even though I think some people mightn't pick it up straight away, it's you get the feel that Kirill does really care about Nikolai. He almost sees him as family, or some sort of closemanship there, like between the two. There's love there, or there's maybe attractiveness on Kirill's part because of his sexuality.
I never got that hint in like sexually. Why I knew that he was fond of him, and I knew that there was some sort of connection there on Kirill's part.
That's why the guy at the start of the film was killed, because he was apparently spreading rumours about Kirill being queer in the language of the film, and because he was talking about poorly about the family.
Right. Okay. Because I knew he was just talking about the family to the cops, but I didn't know that he was specifically talking about Kirill being queer.
That's what they were talking about.
Cool.
That, remember when they have, just before that scene, Simeon has the conversation with that man's father outside, and the guy is afraid to tell Simeon that that's what his son had been saying.
Yeah. That brings me another question for me. Is that Kirill's daughter that wound up blowing up? So that, again, that's what I think I mean with the movie. You're always kind of left with questions. Whereas the mother of the child is Kirill married? You know, all these things.
I mean, Freddie Mercury and Elton John were married.
Freddie Mercury and Elton John were married. What has that anything to do with?
Well, they were married to women, like.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not. Sorry. But I think it's because you don't get any involvement with the mother other than that one scene. I don't even think the child. There's no mention of Papa or anything like that. She does. He calls her baby, and then he mentions granddad. And if it wasn't for him mentioning grandpa or papa or whatever, I wouldn't have associated that being father and daughter. So it can be a little vague. It can be a little vague at times, the film.
Sure, I didn't pick it up the first time I watched it that he was at the very, either bisexual or a closeted gay man. It's not something maybe you would pick up in a first viewing, but I think when I watched it and I paid attention, I think it's pretty obvious that that's what the film is saying.
He does just flat out, doesn't Nikolai just flat out say it to Simeon at the end, right?
Say what?
That Kirill is queer.
I don't think so.
I think he does. I remember seeing it.
No, it's your man's father says it to Simeon, and that's it. No one else says it. But it's set up throughout the whole film that Kirill is queer, again, language of the film, because obviously he has a big blow up with his father, after Nikolai ends up in hospital. The daughter tells us that they were roaring and screaming, and apparently there was a fight, but one of them didn't fight back.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says it's not really a fight if the other. Is it really a fight if the other person doesn't fight back?
And you can tell Simeon is ashamed of Kirill, so he.
Yeah. So another scene that I quite liked was almost the confrontation between Nikolai and Simone when all the bottles of wine is in the truck and Nikolai stands up for Kirill. It really kind of shows the tough character that Nikolai is supposed to be, or at least the what's the word I'm looking for? He's not afraid. He's not afraid of Simeon.
Well, he kind of has to stand up for Kirill.
Yeah.
Or because that's he's in with the family, because at that point the father doesn't really respect. He doesn't trust him, but he doesn't respect him. He doesn't know him that well. He's Kirill's guy. He's just a driver.
Yeah. So I think he does a great job of playing that character that needs to earn the respect of Simeon
and survive in the organization.
Yeah. So I really like that scene. I think he really shines in that scene.
I would agree.
And Simeon really shines too, because he just comes across as a person that you really don't want to get on the wrong side of.
He's just so well cast, and he can go from this very kind of grandfatherly, warm figure to this guy you would not want to cross, because you don't know what would happen to you.
I was going to bring up the scene where the two of them are in the restaurant and they're sitting at the table talking about Kirill and what's going on. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
If you want to talk about it now. Just set up the context.
Okay. It really just puts into perspective, right, like who Simeon is and what kind of person he is, and like how he feels about Kirill in that instance. And like you said, he is perfectly cast, and like you see the conflict in Nikolai as well, and where he stands. By that I mean like he knows what he wants to say, but he knows what he has to say at the same time, And that was where I was talking to you about the color correction before as well, where I feel like they turned up the saturation a little too much, because there's the two of them, they look too tanned, if you know what I mean. Like the color in their skin sticks out way too much, and Armin's eyes are shining as well. But I feel like they had to do that just to like put more emphasis on their performance.
Yeah, I think they wanted to make him just this kind of striking character. But let's move on to one of the final scenes of the film, where Krill has kidnapped what is ostensibly his stepsister at this point, that we find out that Simeon is the father of Tatiana's child. He raped her when she was it 14? I think 16. Yeah, 14.
Yeah.
And he goes and he kidnaps her because Simeon has asked him to obviously dispose of the child. And then we have kind of this kind of madcap trek through London streets with Anna and Nikolai as they race to save the child. Did you have any opinions on that?
Not really a massive opinion. Like, it wasn't. I don't really have anything good or bad to say about that, because it goes by so quickly. In my opinion, like, you go straight from the hospital to the alleyway, and then they're not too far behind him.
But like the scene in the alleyway and stuff, did you have an opinion on that or anything?
Well, we already spoke about how Nikolai and Kirill, how they work off each other, and how Nikolai convinces Kirill to give back the baby. The performance wise, it's done very well, and then it just kind of just hits a brick wall at the very end with the kiss. Because we said that already. That didn't feel right, and even when you see the actors portraying it, it just doesn't look right from their point of view either. Like, just the way they're doing it just doesn't look right.
Yeah, you know? It doesn't feel in the character's motivation at that point, really. Although maybe, Anna, I suppose you could say maybe she was overwhelmed and just grateful that she managed to get the child. That's kind of the only way around I could see her maybe kissing him, because there doesn't seem to be any real romantic interest before that. She seems mostly afraid of him. And obviously at the end, she still doesn't even know. She doesn't know that he's an undercover cop or anything.
She is a little bit interested because of the whole giving her a lift home and him saying that it's a Christmas present and stuff. You do get that kind of like I'm not saying that she's sexually interested or attracted, but she does seem more interested in who he is and what he's about after that point.
And obviously he fixed her motorbike and everything.
Yeah, just these little things. I thought it was a good scene. Again, going back to it just furthermore brings out the complex character of Kirill. Obviously, he is probably not suited for the mob, but has spent most of his life trying to live up to his father's expectations and where he has to be in terms of the family. And he's kind of torn apart between what his father wants and what he thinks is right.
He's empathetic, really, to the situation where his father is obviously this kind of stone-hearted monster.
His
really,
father, his father is just by the time you get to the movie, you realise, and it goes back to what you were saying there about he portrays himself as this caring and almost lovable grandfather figure, and by the time you get to the movie, you realise that he's an absolute monster and horrible person. Like, so yeah, it's a good scene. I'd have to agree with you that the kiss is probably the strange part. It probably wasn't needed. It definitely wasn't needed, and I don't think it wasn't warranted at all.
Excellent performance from is it Vincent Cassel, the guy who plays Krill in that scene?
Yeah. Oh yes. He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
He's
the whole
phenomenal. Probably should have got an Oscar nomination, maybe, as well as Viggo for supporting actor, I would say.
Has that ever happened? That I know you said supporting actor. Did Viggo get best actor in this? Nominated?
He got nominated for best actor. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's kind of a different conversation. But he probably should have been nominated for an Oscar, because I think that's a very powerful scene. He's racked with guilt and of the knowledge of what he's kind of being told to do, and
he's like fighting himself, trying to convince himself not to do it. Yeah.
And even at that point, he's not even choosing the child over his father. He's choosing Nikolai.
Yeah.
Over his father in that point,
because he probably is going to do it.
Oh yeah, he was going to do it. Yeah, he was going to do it.
Yeah, even though he didn't really want to. But it's a very dynamic scene. You get to see the human side of Kirill, which isn't something that you see at any other stage during the film,
except maybe in the basement.
Do you think it's more of a manipulation by Nikolai than an actual relationship?
Yeah, I don't think Nikolai really cares about him that much.
Yeah, he doesn't. But he knows how to play him.
Obviously, he wants, he wants to keep Krill on his side, and he'll say whatever the hell he has to make sure he can stay within that organization. But maybe he does care about him,
Again, the film is vague on these kind of, but it's left,
which is fine.
Yeah.
By me anyway. That's it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily need to know.
When you understand what the type of film this is, it's very well done. It's just a story. It's just a 90-minute story. It's not trying to dive into complex characterizations and plots and scenarios and stuff. It's just a simple story, and it does it very well.
It's heavily plot focused in and not character focused.
Yeah, and it's not complex.
It's a pretty straightforward film. Is there any other kind of story scenes you want to talk about, or anything about the story?
The whole situation between Anna's mother and the uncle, again, all that's kind of vague. They're just kind of characters that are there to help along the story. The uncle is there to translate the book, and I'm not even quite sure what the purpose of the mother is. It's just someone that is Anna to fall back on.
Yeah, it's a support role with Anna that kind of help and guide her decisions, kind of trying to pull her in the opposite direction, not to get involved.
Exactly.
So she's kind of that opposing force.
And even though we already said what the uncle is very hard hitting with what he says at times, I quite enjoyed the character.
Yeah, after that one scene he is very good in the film.
He's standing up.
Yeah,
to the
you don't like. Was he in the KGB? Was he not in the KGB? He probably wasn't.
Yeah,
he probably wasn't.
I think he's full of shit.
But then when you see, like, I kind of gave more emphasis in the scene where they're in the restaurant together, where he expresses real anger towards him. Do you think that was just fake? That was just put on for show, just to try and scare him, or?
Yeah, I think he's genuinely angry because
rage
he knows
for it.
The organization that they're dealing with and everything at this point, and how they've treated this young woman and Tatiana and her child. He is obviously revolted and disgusted as the audience is. So he's kind of an audience avatar in that situation.
When he spits in Nikolai's face, he's the type of character where you're just like, oh no, this is just escalating things now, and you don't know what. Obviously something bad is going to happen to the uncle. Consequences, that's what I'm trying to say. Obviously you expect that the uncle's going to suffer from the consequences of his actions for standing up to the mob in such a way and stuff. Obviously that doesn't happen. He gets looked after, but you don't, up until that point you don't know. You think, well, that's obviously someone that is going to be a consequence, not so much a consequence of the uncle, but that's going to be a consequence of Anna's actions now as well.
What do you guys think of the cinematography?
It's quite simple, but the shot composition is lovely in a lot of ways. It's very mosaic.
I agree, yeah.
It doesn't need to overcomplicate things. From what I remember, a lot of the film is like just purely static camera. The camera is positioned on a tripod. I don't even think there's a lot of handheld stuff apart from that fight scene. But apart from that, I think, a lot of it's just very competent, which is nice. The director knows where he wants the camera. He knows the angles he wants. Even the blocking of a lot of the characters in the scenes is great. I thinking back to that shot of Simeon and that guy's father, and Simeon is obviously on like a raised platform looking over this man to show dominance and to show his superiority. So it's just very well done. There's nothing more that you can say about it. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's very good at what it does, and it knows what it has to do. It was also done by oh god, I'm not going to pronounce this name, but the cinematographer, he was Sosinski, I think that's how you pronounce it, but he also weirdly did cinematography for Mars Attack.
Oh no way!
Looks nothing like this film. So
wow, okay, yeah, I have written here in my notes that the cinematography lacks in comparison to set design. I feel like the more I think about that, I feel like it's a bit harsh on it. I mean, it does do what it needs to do. It's nothing special, Garen.
But I think when you talk about cinematography, you're also taking into consider lighting, because the film is very well lit, especially the scenes inside the restaurant.
Oh yeah, like the scenes in the restaurant stuck out a lot for me.
But I can see what you're saying. But like, it's not. The film is also not looking to be like a presentation of like top of the range cinematography and what you can do with cameras.
No, definitely not. It was in areas like that where it felt a little like I said before, old fashioned. Like when in the kitchen, but when he tells Krill to go downstairs to get the bottles, Nikolai walks over to the desk, picks up a cherry and puts it back, but then there's a close-up of him picking up the cherry and putting it on the back, and then back to the two of them having their conversation. It just felt old-fashioned to me in that way, because you don't really see things like that anymore, where like you just know he's doing it, you don't need to see it, that's like, but having that emphasis on there was just pretty old-fashioned to me.
Cronenberg is also largely an independent filmmaker, so he's not looking to go over the top. He's just looking to kind of tell a very competent, straightforward story. You don't need to overcomplicate things. He has his prosthetics, which he's probably, he's one of the best in the world at, and putting that in these films. So, he doesn't need to overcomplicate it with additional new camera angles and stuff and camera movement. So,
speaking of his prosthetics, I'm assuming he doesn't do them himself, so he just works really closely with his team.
When he was back starting, he would have almost done all of that stuff by himself. When he was making purely independent, low budget films, obviously he would have done a lot of those prosthetics himself. Especially, I think Videodrome, he did a lot of prosthetics for, and The Fly, and he designs all of this stuff himself, as far as I know. But Chris, what about you? Cinematography, bye.
I'd have to agree with you. I think I liked it for the fact that it's simple. We get the warmth, lighting when we're inside in the restaurants, and then we get the contrast, cold, dim, when we cut to the scenes like the body in the freezer and stuff like that. There's a lot of the shots are very tight, very close in on the people. We get a lot of over the shoulder. They're all very, very kind of tight shots. Just in my interpretation was just to really bring you into the family, into the mob and the lifestyle and stuff like that, in with the characters and stuff. So I like, as you said, that there's nothing over the top, there's nothing exaggerated, there's nothing new, but it's simple and it's done well. So I couldn't really fault it.
I would wholeheartedly agree, and I do.
Yay! That's another agreement for an
2
episode.
weeks in a row.
All three of us.
I'm gonna make a chart. You won't believe it, Jamie. Nathan agreed with me on 2 points. I think myself and Nathan agreed on 2 points last week, which was absolutely amazing. So I'm thinking about starting a little counter chart of just how many times Nathan actually agrees with me on something on this show, because it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's special.
We agree more than we disagree.
I think you compromise more than you agree.
I think we compromise more than we actually cold-heartedly agree. Yeah.
This isn't a very it's not a difficult film to.
So I know I've spoken about production design a lot. What did you guys think, Nathan?
Again, it's very competent. For a lack of vocabulary, it's very good. All of the different sets and locations feel unique. Anna's house feels different to the restaurant. The restaurant feels different to the hospital, which of course it would, when obviously a lot of that comes down to lighting as well. But especially if you look at in the background and in terms of wallpaper and stuff, it's a lot. It's very different. Anna's house is a lot, even though it's more cramped and closed in, it also feels a lot warmer. It has this wallpaper in the background that's like an open field of flowers or something. Whereas the restaurant, Simeon's restaurant, in contrast, it's a lot more wide and open, but in a lot of ways feels a lot colder in terms of production design, not necessarily even because of camera. But again, the production design, we can talk about a lot of things there, whether it's the prosthetics, which we've already spoken on quite a lot, costume design and all this, it's very well done. There's not a whole lot to say about it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Nathan. I think the film does a great job to kind of bring you into the culture. I've been to restaurants in Russia and stuff like that, and it does a great job of portraying the kind of the Russian vibes, the Russian style of restaurants.
When were you in Russia?
I've been to Russia twice.
Why the fuck you go to Russia?
I went on holiday with the family. Let's just say I didn't quite enjoy my time in Russia. It's quite a hostile
environment,
uncomfortable environment. But that's we'll leave that chat for another time. Yeah, I think the film does a great job to show you the kind of Russian culture or Eastern culture, mob and stuff. It's very family orientated. It's very kind of like the families first and foremost when it comes. And I think the film does a great job of portraying that, particularly through its own production design, because the restaurants are very vibrant. They're very warm. They're very welcoming. And I think it does a good job in that sense.
Talking about that warmness that you're kind of talking about is, look how Simeon is dressed throughout the film. He's wearing these bright, warm, inviting colours, which is totally antithetical and opposite to what his character is about and what he does.
Totally agree with you.
The production design, the costume design, the hair and makeup and all this work with the film to trick the audience into thinking and wanting when something completely different is going on with the actual characters.
Yeah. Definitely.
So very well incorporated.
And just to go back and repeat what you said a while ago, I really like the location decisions that were picked picked for this film. From when the body gets thrown out for the current.
That alleyway.
The
That alleyway is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. The
I don't know
streets
how he
outside
found
the
us.
restaurant, amazing. All that works really, really well in the film. Even the way that the loading bay scene is shot and stuff with the truck with the wine and all that, all of it just works really well for the story that they're trying to tell.
So we talk about sound and score. First, sound and score. I don't think anything, from my opinion, like nothing really stuck out for me. You know, like
Really?
I disagree. I thought the music was incredible.
The
but
violin was wonderful.
but it kind of goes in with the whole aesthetic of, you know, gangster films and mob films. You know what I mean? Like it didn't really stand out for me.
I disagree. And the score isn't even in it. That like the score is actually pretty minimal. It's not in the film a whole lot, but when it comes in, Jesus, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with Nathan anyway.
It's just wonderful, and you know, the music was done by Howard Shore. He's known most famously for The Lord of the Rings. You know, which the best score of all time, probably, debatably at the very least.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
Lord of the
you
Rings,
can
yeah.
There's definitely arguments to it.
Yeah,
It's definitely
but
up there. Yeah.
The music in this film, perfection. I actually think I'd go that far. Again, shockingly not nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Now I thought the music fit very well for when it did come in. It fit very well to the film.
Well, I never said it didn't fit or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, there was nothing really special about it, in my opinion. Like, I thought it just fit the film, and it fit the whole mob film aesthetic. You know what I mean?
It starts off. I think does the music? It might start off in the beginning of the film. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
but
you're right.
It's so melancholic and it's just depressing and sad. But there's also like
something hypnotic about it.
Something hypnotic, and it helps like to drive the film.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. It's just I don't know how I can't really understand how you didn't come away not liking the music, Brian, because
no, it is subtle. It is subtle. Do you know?
It is very subtle,
but it's supposed to be subtle. But once you take note of it, it's captivating.
It was the first thing I noticed in the film.
I didn't hate it or dislike it or anything. It's just
by no
means.
yeah.
But I'd have to agree with Nathan. I think it plays a bigger part in the movie than what you thought it did.
But also the sound design in the film. There's not a whole lot of it. Well, obviously there's a whole lot of sound design throughout the film, but there's not a lot to like point your finger at and say, oh. But obviously, you know, that fight scene again is just the sound design, and that is
very well
great.
done.
Again, I'm pretty sure there's no music in that scene, and it's just
there isn't.
No,
there isn't any music.
You're literally sucked into what's happening.
You get their heavy breathing. You hear the slashes, which again aren't over the top. They feel very realistic to that scenario. But yeah, I think this film has in terms of sound, I think this film is very good.
I think the whole film's philosophy on less is more is really shown throughout the film in different ways, and I think the sound design is definitely one of the points to that.
Since we know how you guys feel about sound and the score, what do you guys think about the editing all around?
I know Chris said that he thought the film was a bit of a slow burn, which I think is fair, but I remember I paused the film 40 minutes in because I had to get a drink, and I couldn't believe it was that far in the film. If you had asked me, I would have said 15 minutes. I think it's just so well paced, and it moves at such a speed that it's just really well paced.
I think what I meant by a slow burn, what I meant was the plot unfolding.
Sure.
At no point did I feel that the film was dragging, or I totally agree with you. I think I was just curious of how long was left in the film, and an hour had already gone by, or over an hour. There was I literally only had like a half hour left, and it just, I couldn't believe how quick the time went by. Yeah,
because I paused at the 40-minute mark, and it was at that point that all of the questions that had been set up in the beginning of the film had been answered one after another. You know, who's the father, why was the man killed, and whatever. I can't remember what the other one was off the top of my head. It's kind of I was just a bit shocked that amount of time had gone forward at least. But the director, the editor, just to mention very quickly, is Ronald Sanders. He hasn't done that much that's well known, it doesn't seem. He did do A History of Violence, which was Cronenberg's previous film 2 years earlier.
That's what really kicked things off, I think, for that whole
Yeah.
collaboration, and a lot of those kind of a lot of those movies really came out around that time. Mob movies, short stories, kind of like that like Vigo just being the attraction to the film and stuff. But yeah, what do you think? What was your comparison between History of Violence and this?
So, to be fair, I haven't seen History of Violence in quite a long time. But I remember, I remember, I know we talked about it briefly last week off air, but I know you weren't a huge fan. But I remember liking it a lot. Again, but I think a lot of that probably comes down to Viggo Mortensen's performance.
Yeah.
Because I think he's just such a good actor.
Yeah, because I think I was going to ask, like, in terms of pacing and editing, if it was the same editor. Did you see?
Oh yeah,
can you remember
yeah.
if there was much similarities between the two?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I think the film was kind of very similarly paced, and it moved quite briskly through its plot. And you don't really feel the time pass. So again, maybe this editor should be doing a bit more work, because he seems to be doing a pretty great job.
Yeah, I agree with you. What about yourself, Jamie? What did you think of the editing?
I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, because I keep saying it, but his editing style for this film specifically, I haven't seen History of Violence, so I'm kind of you guys gonna have to tell me if it's the same thing again. But it was very old fashioned in that sense, and where how he put emphasis in these little things, or like Vigo putting a cherry back in the bowl. It was definitely not needed, but emphasis was put into it, And with the fighting scene as well, every punch was a close-up, every slash was a close-up, So there were just emphasis in actions. It was just very, very old-fashioned to me.
You brought up the fruit scene though twice with the cherry. Do you know what the significance of that was?
Him helping out Kirill?
Okay, because you keep making it sound as if he put that fruit in for no reason and actually had no symbolism. The symbol was it was plastic. It was fake fruit.
Yeah.
The same as Viggo Mortensen's character Nikolai. He's not really this person that they think.
Okay.
So like it's not that was the significance of them cutting to that fruit in that scene.
Okay.
It wasn't just something there to like cut away to. Cronenberg obviously thought it was prominent enough to show. Because at that point we don't know who Nikolai is, that he's an undercover cop. So like, that's just Cronenberg dropping a hint that you won't pick up probably your first time around, but you should probably pick it up maybe the second time.
Really? So that him just picking up a cherry and putting it in the bowl had significance to that level?
Of course, it wasn't a real cherry. It was a plastic cherry. It wasn't real. I don't think that's reaching. Like maybe.
Well, not in, like. Are you just talking about in like the making of the film? It was fake, or in that scene it was fake?
No, it was a fake cherry. It wasn't real cherry. The fruit in that bowl was fake.
Okay, I didn't get that at all. I thought it was just he was just cleaning up after.
No, he was, but the significance of it being a fake fruit, the same way
he is cleaning up after.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, that's more symbolism.
Actually, Sorry about that. Now I didn't actually cop that part.
No, it's just that you brought it up twice. I just said I talked about it briefly.
Yeah, that's how I feel about the editing anyway. It's just very old-fashioned, his style of editing.
Which is also known as the best type of editing, where you don't really notice it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be distracted by editing. It should be just something that's naturally there, that's happening, and it's just helping move the story along. The worst type of editing is editing you notice.
We should probably talk about actor and character.
Yeah, because this film is impeccably cast.
Mm-hmm.
Very few films come to mind where I think you couldn't really have got a more perfect cast, because Naomi Watts is perfect as this very earnest, damaged woman who has gone through obviously a significant loss in her life over the past year or whatever. So she plays that very well, and because of that and how she plays that character, you understand her motivations better.
Yeah, she had a miscarriage, so she's connected to this baby. Yeah.
Vincent Cassel, who plays Kirill, who we talked briefly about. After watching this film, I'm kind of the opinion he probably should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Probably should have won Best Supporting Actor, judging by some of the nominations.
Oh, did you want to spit out some that were there?
No, it's only the Oscars. It's not that important.
Okay.
But he's fantastic in this film. I don't know. I'd have to think about is he better than Viggo Mortensen in this film. I think he has a lot more range that he's allowed to explore in that character in terms of he's very repressed. Even taking away, his sexuality or whatever, he's very repressed. That his father is obviously he's living in the shadow of his father, and he knows that he's not going to be able to rise to that level, which is why the relationship with Viggo Mortensen is so important to him. And again, the grandfather, the mother, very good for helping drive Anna's character forward. They're again brilliantly cast. I've never seen the actor that played her father in anything, or her uncle at least,
Stefan,
in anything. Yeah, I've never seen him in anything else, and I haven't seen him in anything since. But I'd like to see what else he's done. Maybe he's done some more interesting work. The other kind of incredible performances from Armin Muller-Stahl, the guy who plays Simeon. And I've seen him in stuff before. I've seen him in a lot of things before.
Oh yeah.
He's one of these actors that will kind of just show up in this background grandfatherly role. I know he was in Angels and Demons and played some cardinal and that. But yeah, no, again, not we won't get too in deep into it, but yeah, casting this film is like second to none. It's just impeccable.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything you said there. I think every actor brings their A game in their performance, and every character holds its purpose within the film. As you said there about the driving force of the uncle and the aunt with Anna's character, the complex. Actually, to go back on what you said there, I can't believe that Vincent wasn't even nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this film, because he's, as you said, the range he has, the complex character that he tries to be in some of the scenes where he goes from someone very supportive, understanding, caring, well, maybe not caring, but he go and then he can turn on a dime. He's almost bipolar, being torn apart at times and stuff. And that's a credit to the actor himself. I think he does a great job of bringing that complex and emotionally conflicted character.
I think it's safe to say we are all in agreement in the way that the casting is very well done. Everybody does an exceptional job in this film. For me, I feel that Viggo, Armin, and Vincent specifically stuck out for me over Naomi Watts. It's just like the three of them, whenever they are on screen together, I feel like there was more of a
chemistry. Yeah,
a chemistry between them and how they worked off each other. It was unlike Viggo and Naomi. It was definitely the film's strongest points for me when they were all on screen together.
And we can't forget the likes of Ekram. I mean, obviously he didn't want to go over the top being special, but he did enough in the scenes that he was in to kind of show that the audience that he is mentally impaired, that there is something there, but without actually going down that route. You know what I'm trying to say?
He didn't feel like a stereotype.
He didn't feel like a stereotype, but did enough to let you know.
Here's the thing about Vincent Cassel, right? Is this his best performance, or was he better in Shrek as Robin Hood?
That's a tough one now. That's oof.
It's something to consider,
Oh, I'm conflicted there now. You've stumped me, Nathan. You've absolutely stumped me now with that one.
Chris, I asked a hard question.
To be fair, you do, and it deserves a hard answer. And no. I think he was better in Shrek.
Nice.
That's fair.
That's agreed.
Agreed. I think I lean more on the Shrek side.
Immediately remembering the song.
How did you know that?
I just looked it up.
I think we could wrap it up now, guys. So what did you guys think of your just overview of your feelings, and would you recommend? You know what? I'm going to go first, just swap things up. I thought this film was very, very good, and I enjoyed it from start to finish. Yeah, sure, I can be nitpicky and pick this and that, but it was old fashioned. It was good. It did what it needed to do. Everything was done very well, and I would 110% recommend this film. Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah. So similar to you, I really liked this film. I'd seen it a couple of years ago, and I liked it more this time, and I caught on to a couple of the more subtle hints that they were dropping throughout the film. So yeah, no, it's an easy recommendation for me, especially if you're into mob films. This is a taste a bit different to Martin Scorsese, which is good. It doesn't feel like just like a Martin Scorsese knockoff. It feels wholly original and wholly of Cronenberg's own vision. So yeah, for me, it's an easy recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like this film, especially when you look at it of what the overall goal of the film is and what it wants to achieve. I think it does it. You can't argue that it does it really well. It's a simple story. It's 90 minutes long. It sticks to what it wants to do, and it doesn't venture off in any different directions. It's got a lot of positives, whether you want to take the acting, the plot, the twist, or production design, or any of these things. For me, it's got it all, and I'd have no problem recommending this to someone, because I think even if they don't love the film, I think people will go away satisfied. And as I said, it's not overly long. It's not going to take up your whole evening to get you anything like that. So it's an easy recommendation for me. I think it's definitely one of, if not Cronenberg's best film out there. But it's possibly Viggo Mortensen's best performance, and as we've already said, Vincent Cassel is definitely one to watch for this film. His performance alone is excellent. So yeah, it's an easy recommendation for me, and I'm glad we got to choose it for this week's episode.
It's a beautiful sight to see that all three of us are agreeing with each other. You know, it doesn't always happen, but it's always great to see.
It's also great to see you show up for an episode as well, Jamie. So we'll cold-heartedly thank you for again being able to fit us into your time and to make an appearance on the shows. We hope you can join us more often.
I plan to. Thank you for listening. This has been Industry Standard. That's Nathan and that's Chris, and we will see you next week.
Good luck.
Bye now.